When we talk about the epidemics of obesity and diabetes, it is tempting to focus on the obvious, food and weight. But if we stop there, we miss the deeper truth. These conditions are not simply the result of eating too much or moving too little. They are the product of a culture, a rhythm of daily life, and an environment that quietly reshapes the way our bodies function. The real drivers are often silent, creeping in unnoticed, until they become the very air we breathe. Think about the way food has shifted in just a few generations. A century ago, meals were built from whole ingredients, vegetables pulled from the ground, bread baked at home, proteins that weren't pumped full of additives. Today, the majority of what fills our plates comes from factories, wrapped in colorful packaging, engineered to deliver not nutrition but profit. Processed foods are designed to be hyper-palatable, rich in sugar, salt, and fat, tricking the brain into craving more, even when the body has had enough. This manipulation of appetite is not an accident. It is a business model. And the more it succeeds, the more our health pays the price. Now combine this with how we live. Technology has gifted us incredible conveniences, but it has also quietly stolen our movement. Cars replace walking, screens replace outdoor play, and many of us spend the majority of our waking hours seated. The human body is built for activity, for endurance, for constant micro movements that keep metabolism engaged. When that movement vanishes, the body doesn't just slow, it begins to malfunction. Muscles weaken, fat accumulates, and the delicate balance of hormones like insulin and leptin starts to collapse. Stress is another silent driver. Chronic stress floods the bloodstream with cortisol, a hormone that tells the body to store fat, especially around the abdomen. Pair that with modern sleep deprivation. People sleeping fewer hours in poorer quality sleep than ever before, and you create conditions where the body resists weight loss and clings to sugar. Sleep and stress may sound like lifestyle issues, but in reality, they are biochemical disruptors as powerful as any drug. What makes this particularly insidious is that it all feels normal. We've normalized exhaustion. We've normalized processed convenience as food. We've normalized sitting for hours as if it were harmless. And so these epidemics grow not because people are lazy or weak-willed, but because the systems we live within are designed in ways that promote sickness. It is a societal problem as much as an individual one. Yet here is where philosophy meets biology. Every decision we make, every bite, every skipped hour of sleep, every moment we choose to stay seated instead of moving, those choices ripple into our bodies. Over time, they become habits, and those habits become our destiny. The body is not separate from daily life. It is a mirror of it. And in the reflection, we see the fingerprints of culture, family traditions, economics, and even government policy. That's why we call it an epidemic. It spreads through communities, not just individuals. But if the drivers are silent, the awareness must be loud. If we understand what is truly fueling obesity and diabetes, we take away some of their power. When you realize that sugar hidden in your breakfast cereal or low-fat yogurt is not a harmless indulgence, but a biochemical spark that inflames your body, you begin to see food differently. When you recognize that skipping sleep isn't just about being tired, it's about pushing your pancreas and liver into dysfunction. You may start protecting your rest with the seriousness of a prescription. Knowledge transforms invisible enemies into visible ones. And when we see them, we can fight them. This is not a call to paranoia, but to consciousness. To live in modern society is to be surrounded by silent drivers of disease, but awareness allows us to push back. It allows us to reclaim our choices, even within the pressures of modern life. And it reminds us of a timeless truth. Our bodies are not broken by design. They are responding exactly as they are programmed to, given the inputs we provide. If we feed them chaos, they reflect chaos. If we feed them balance, they reflect health. So the epidemics of obesity and diabetes are not mysteries. They are the predictable outcomes of systems that no longer honor the body's natural design. The question that remains is whether we are willing to notice the whispers before they turn into shouts. Because every epidemic begins in silence, and every healing begins in awareness. The silent drivers are powerful, but they are not invincible. And if we begin listening to what our bodies have been trying to tell us all along, we can change the course of these epidemics, starting with ourselves, starting today. Your health is not stolen overnight. It is surrendered quietly, piece by piece. The power to take it back begins the moment you choose to see what has been hidden in plain sight. If we've uncovered the silent drivers behind obesity and diabetes, the next question becomes what's happening inside the body when those forces take hold. Because these aren't abstract conditions that exist out there somewhere. They are real biological processes unfolding inside us every single day. And to understand the epidemic, we need to understand the inner landscape, the chemistry, the hormones, the subtle shifts that eventually erupt into disease. The body is a masterpiece of balance. Think of insulin, for example, the hormone that acts like a key, unlocking your cells so that sugar from your bloodstream can be absorbed and used as fuel. In a healthy system, insulin works beautifully. You eat, sugar rises in the blood, insulin escorts it into the cells, and energy is released. But when the diet is constantly overloaded with refined carbohydrates and sugar, insulin is forced to work overtime. It knocks and knocks until the cells, exhausted, stop responding. This is insulin resistance, the hallmark of type 2 diabetes. It is not sudden, it builds gradually, meal after meal, snack after snack, until what once was balance becomes dysfunction. But insulin is only one player. Think about fat cells, often dismissed as passive storage depots. In reality, they are active hormonal organs. Fat tissue secretes molecules called adipokines, some of which are inflammatory. The more fat accumulates, particularly around the belly, the more inflammatory signals circulate in the bloodstream. Chronic low-grade inflammation, invisible but persistent, begins to damage blood vessels, interfere with the heart, and even dull the brain. So obesity isn't simply about carrying extra weight. It's about carrying an organ that has turned hostile, sending distress signals that slowly poison the system. Now let's add another layer. The gut microbiome, the trillions of bacteria living in your intestines, is emerging as one of the most powerful influences on metabolism. A diverse, balanced microbiome helps regulate appetite, extract nutrients efficiently, and keep inflammation in check. But diets high in processed foods and low in fiber starve the good bacteria and feed the harmful ones. This imbalance creates what scientists call dysbiosis, which can directly contribute to insulin resistance and weight gain. What we eat doesn't just feed us, it feeds the microscopic world within us, and that world in turn shapes how we process food, how we store fat, and how we respond to disease. And we cannot ignore the brain. The reward circuits that light up when we eat sugar and fat are the same ones triggered by addictive drugs. Dopamine surges, giving us that brief hit of pleasure, and then it crashes, leaving us craving more. Over time, the brain's receptors dull, requiring larger amounts to achieve the same effect. This is why many people feel trapped in cycles of overeating. It is not simply willpower. It is neurobiology hijacked by modern food engineering. Understanding this takes away the shame and replaces it with strategy. When you realize your cravings are not moral failures but brain chemistry, you can approach them with compassion and new tools for change. And finally, let's talk about the heart. Obesity and diabetes are not confined to blood sugar. They are systemic. Excess sugar in the blood damages blood vessel linings, making them sticky and prone to plaque buildup. High insulin levels encourage the body to hold on to sodium, raising blood pressure. The same process that begins with a slice of cake or a can of soda ends with stiffened arteries, heart attacks, and strokes. This is why these epidemics are not just medical curiosities, they are life and death realities, touching nearly every organ. What makes this sobering is also what makes it empowering. The body is not working against us. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do, given the inputs it receives. If you bombard it with sugar, it adapts by resisting insulin. If you accumulate excess fat, it adapts by turning that fat into an active signaling organ. If you deprive your microbiome of fiber, it adapts by fostering bacteria that thrive on imbalance. The body adapts to survive, but sometimes that survival mechanism becomes the very engine of disease. The philosophical truth here is striking. Health and disease are not opposites. They are points along a spectrum of adaptation. The body bends in response to the environment, and if we push it too far, it breaks. But just as dysfunction builds gradually, so too does healing. The same insulin that has been dulled by sugar can regain sensitivity when given rest. The same fat cells that inflame the system can shrink and quiet their signals. The same microbiome that has been starved can flourish again with the right nourishment. Biology is forgiving, remarkably so, if we give it a chance. So when we talk about obesity and diabetes, let's not reduce them to numbers on a scale or a blood test. Let's recognize them as the body's language, a message written in hormones, inflammation, bacteria, and neural pathways. And let's listen closely, because once we understand that language, we are no longer helpless. We can intervene, not with fear, but with clarity. The epidemics may be vast, but they are not inevitable. They are built in the small daily choices that, over time, accumulate into destiny. And if that is true, then the opposite is also true. Healing can be built one choice at a time, until the body once again reflects balance instead of dysfunction. The body is not your enemy, it is your messenger. Listen to what it is telling you, and you will find the first step toward reclaiming your health. If we've looked at the hidden drivers of obesity and diabetes, and then explored the biology of how those forces unravel the body, the next step is to confront the choices that create this reality every day. Because while biology sets the stage, it is behavior that writes the script. And here is where we must be honest with ourselves. The epidemic is not simply born in laboratories, in food factories, or in genes. It is reinforced in kitchens, in grocery aisles, and in our daily rituals around food. When you walk into a supermarket, you are not entering a neutral space. You are entering an environment carefully engineered to influence your decisions. The sugary cereals at eye level, the sodas stacked near checkout, the family size bags of chips, all of these are not random. They are the result of decades of marketing strategies designed to override willpower and make you believe indulgence is normal. And when these foods are cheap, convenient, and aggressively advertised, they become part of the cultural rhythm. We end up equating celebration with cake, relaxation with pizza, and stress relief with ice cream. Food has become less about nourishment and more about comfort, distraction, or even sedation. But the consequences of those choices accumulate silently. One soda doesn't cause diabetes. One oversized meal doesn't cause obesity. The danger lies in repetition, in the quiet erosion of health that happens meal after meal, year after year. Think of it like erosion on a shoreline, barely noticeable in the moment, devastating when you step back decades later. And so many people reach midlife or later and say, I don't know how I got here. The truth is, it wasn't one catastrophic decision. It was 1,000 little ones, so small they seemed harmless until together they built an epidemic. But I want to emphasize something crucial here. This is not about blame. Too often, health advice is laced with shame, as though people intentionally destroy their bodies. That's not the case. People make choices within the framework they've been given. If the affordable food is processed, if the convenient food is unhealthy, if the messaging everywhere glamorizes indulgence, then people are doing what humans do best, adapting. And just as biology adapts, behavior adapts to environment, this epidemic is as much about cultural conditioning as it is about individual will. The challenge, then, is not to guilt ourselves, but to awaken ourselves. To begin asking questions when we reach for that packaged snack. Am I hungry or am I bored? Am I nourishing my body or am I numbing my stress? Am I choosing or am I being nudged? That simple pause between impulse and action is where transformation begins. Because every choice is both biological and philosophical. It shapes not only the chemistry of our blood, but also the quality of our days, our energy, our clarity, even our relationships. There's also a psychological trap. We must confront the belief that little won't hurt. That phrase has probably done more damage than we realize. Because when a little becomes daily, when just this once becomes routine, the exception becomes the rule. And the body doesn't measure intention, it measures input. Every cell in your body responds to what you give it without judgment. If you feed it nourishing foods, it heals. If you feed it toxins, it deteriorates. The philosophy here is simple: your body is loyal to you. The question is, are you loyal to your body? I want you to think about how profound this relationship is. You live inside this body every day, and yet many people treat it like an afterthought. We maintain our cars more carefully than our organs. We worry about oil changes more than blood sugar levels. And yet, unlike a car, you don't get a replacement body. You get one. One liver, one pancreas, one heart, one brain. And every choice either protects them or places them at risk. Once you internalize that, the daily decisions stop feeling trivial. They become sacred. But here's the hopeful part. The same repetition that builds disease can also build health. Just as unhealthy meals accumulate into dysfunction, healthy meals accumulate into resilience. Every time you choose an avocado over fried food or water over soda, you are tilting the balance back toward life. You are rewriting the script your biology has been forced to follow. Change doesn't need to be dramatic. It needs to be consistent. That's the psychology of healing. It's not about heroic gestures. It's about quiet, daily loyalty to your body. So when we talk about behavior, we are talking about more than diet or exercise routines. We are talking about philosophy, about how we see ourselves, about whether we treat health as disposable or as sacred. The epidemics of obesity and diabetes are not only medical, they are moral in the sense that they reflect what we value. And if we value longevity, clarity, and freedom from disease, then the behaviors must shift to honor those values. Every bite you take is a vote for health or for disease, for vitality or for decline. Choose wisely, because your body is listening. If we've examined the roots of obesity and diabetes, and we've understood how biology and behavior intersect, then the final piece of this conversation is perhaps the most important. What do we do about it? Because awareness without action is like diagnosing an illness and refusing treatment. Knowledge is only power when it moves us to change. And in the case of these epidemics, the solutions are within our grasp. They don't require waiting for a miracle drug or a groundbreaking technology. They require a shift, simple, practical, but profound in the way we eat, move, and live. Let's start with food, because that is the daily driver of both obesity and diabetes. The body is remarkably responsive to nourishment. Within weeks of shifting from processed foods to whole, fiber-rich, nutrient-dense meals, blood sugar stabilizes, energy increases, and weight begins to normalize. The key is not starvation or punishing restriction. It is abundance of the right foods. Think of colorful vegetables, beans, nuts, whole grains, fish, and yes, fruits in moderation. These aren't just calories, they are instructions for your metabolism. They tell your cells how to function. They lower inflammation, improve insulin sensitivity, and fuel the microbiome that helps regulate everything from mood to immunity. And here's where philosophy meets practicality. You have to begin to see food not as entertainment, but as medicine. That doesn't mean stripping joy from the table. In fact, it's the opposite. The richest joy comes from energy, from vitality, from waking up without aches and fatigue. That joy is purchased not with sugar highs, but with steady nourishment. Every meal is a chance to invest in that kind of life. Now, food is the cornerstone, but it isn't the whole house. Movement is another pillar. And I want to make this clear. You don't need to become an athlete to reverse the trajectory of disease. Walking daily, lifting light weights, stretching, these movements act like signals to your muscles and your metabolism. They tell your body to stay active, to burn efficiently, to stay resilient. Think of exercise not as punishment for overeating, but as an act of respect for your body, a way of reminding it of its strength. 15 to 30 minutes a day is enough to begin changing your trajectory. But perhaps the most underestimated part of the solution lies in stress management and sleep. Chronic stress raises cortisol, which drives cravings, stores fat, and destabilizes blood sugar. Lack of sleep does the same, leaving the body in a state of constant imbalance. People often focus on diet and exercise, but neglect these invisible forces, not realizing they are just as potent. Simple practices like deep breathing, meditation, prayer, journaling, or simply turning off screens an hour before bed can restore balance to your hormones and help reverse these epidemics. And here's something else worth reflecting on: community. Health is not a solitary journey. Studies consistently show that people who change in groups, whether families, faith communities, or social circles, succeed at higher rates. Why? Because human beings mirror each other. If the people around you value fast food and soda, you'll slip into that rhythm. If the people around you celebrate walks, cook together, and prioritize health, you'll rise with them. Culture shapes individuals, but individuals also shape culture. By choosing health, you don't just save yourself, you influence your circle, and that ripple effect can transform families, neighborhoods, even generations. It's also important to be realistic. Change does not mean perfection. It means progress. Too often, people give up because they cheated on their diet or skipped workouts. But let me tell you something, health is not about flawless discipline. It's about consistent loyalty. If you slip, start again the next meal, the next day. The body forgives quickly when you return to giving it what it needs. The real danger is not in failing. It's in staying down after failure. So the path forward is not mysterious. It is clear, tested, and available to every one of us. The tragedy is not that we lack solutions. The tragedy is that we've ignored them, seduced by convenience and overwhelmed by culture. But culture is not destiny. You have agency. You can stand in the grocery store aisle and say no to the marketing trap. You can prepare one simple meal at home instead of defaulting to fast food. You can put on shoes and walk for 15 minutes. You can turn off the television and go to bed an hour earlier. These small, unglamorous acts are in fact the revolution. And here's the philosophical truth beneath it all. Health is freedom. Freedom from dependency on medication. Freedom from fatigue. Freedom from the chains of cravings and the fear of disease. Obesity and diabetes are not only medical conditions, they are prisons. And every good choice is a key that unlocks the door. So I leave you with this: your health is not lost, no matter your age, no matter your diagnosis. It is waiting quietly for you to reclaim it. And the moment you choose life over convenience, nourishment over indulgence, loyalty over neglect, you begin your escape. Choose freedom because your future self is counting on the courage you show today.